So this week's question on better public speaking comes from Barbara Ficarra. She follows me on Instagram. And her question is, when you're presenting a complex topic and every bit of information seems important, how do you narrow it down? Well, Barbara, what I would say to you is what I would say to all of my public speaking masterclass students, which is one story, one message. You are looking for impact when you're in the room. And while it's very compelling to want to include a ton of information, you want to have one story, one message, and then people can ask you follow-up questions in the Q&A. So my tip number one is exactly that. One story, one message. The second thing I would recommend is using a metaphor. Let's take the example of 5G technology. You might not know exactly what that is, but you know that you can probably watch your videos faster, open up 15 more tabs on your computer or phone, or watch TV and work at the same time because of 5G technology. All right, a metaphor that I would provide is a straw. If you were having a smoothie in a skinny mini little straw, it'd probably be hard for you to consume that thing, right? But if you had a really big fat straw, one of those metal ones preferably that could keep the container of all of that fluid, you probably would be able to consume that smoothie. Better yet, you could probably consume it if you just took the straw out and drank it straight out of the glass, because the glass represents 5G technology, a much bigger container for you to be able to consume what you want. The third tip that I would give you is explain it to me like you would explain it to your grandmother. I find this with people that are in machine learning or in really sort of technical fields, they tend to lean on a lot of jargon. The trouble is, and I actually learned this from a litigator once, that if you say a word that someone doesn't understand, they actually don't hear the next 10 words that you said because they're still thinking about that word that they don't recognize. So for example, one day I was telling somebody about how this thing is part of the current zeitgeist. And she said, well, what's zeitgeist? What I would have been better served saying was, this is very relevant to the current topic of the day. This is the stuff that everybody is talking about. In the words of Hemingway, use simpler short sentences, use monosyllabic words. Instead of saying excruciating, say the word hard. Okay, so right now I'm going to give you an example of what I mean by one story, one message. And I'm going to use it with my framework that I typically teach, which is the promise, what I'm going to tell you, the story, and then finally the gifts, the things that are going to land with your audience. So the topic I'm going to talk about is, why is storytelling, emotional, descriptive storytelling with a hint of drama, the way to grab your audience by the short ones? Because why would you ever want to tell a boring story? And the story I'm going to tell to support that is the evolution of the human brain. The human brain is actually made up of three parts. The first is the reptilian brain, the one that's responsible for fight or flight. Thousands of years ago, when we were hunters and gatherers, and it was the difference between shooting the lion to eat for dinner or getting eaten by the lion, our fight or flight brain was responsible for keeping us safe, right? So that's where we register a lot of trauma. The second brain is your emotional brain. You hear something really sad on the news, you start to tear up. It's because your emotional brain is kicking in. The third brain, it's only actually intrinsic to the human being, is the prefrontal cortex. This is the part of your brain that's responsible for executive function. This is where you do deep and very logical thinking. This is where you're able to envision a future for yourself. It's very advanced thinking. Now here's the rub. If I were to just get up in front of you and give you the quarterly numbers of our company and how they did, I would actually only engage the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex can function without the other two brains, emotional and fight or flight. But if I tell you a story behind why we blew it out of the park last quarter because of this client engagement that we got, and I tell it with a little bit of drama, it came down to the wire, we were at loggerheads, we couldn't meet, and then we finally did, guess what I'm engaging? the fight or flight brain. And if I tell you about the sight, the sounds, the smells of that room that we were in as we were coming down to the wire in our negotiation, that's when I engaged your emotional brain by engaging all 5 senses. And then when I bring it home and tell you the numbers that we are projected to make in this coming quarter and the next quarter, that's when I'm engaging the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for future prospection thinking as well as deep executive function. So why in the world would you ever get in front of an audience and do anything other than something that engages all 3 brains? So my gift for the audience is to remember, number 1, that if you only present data or facts, you're actually leaving money on the table, because the prefrontal cortex, the most advanced part of the human brain, doesn't actually need the other 2 parts in order to be able to absorb information. But if you are able to engage with emotion, give me the higher highs, give me the lower lows, give me some drama, you're going to engage all 3 brains. And who would want to ever miss out on that opportunity? Hey, I hope this was helpful for you. I host a mastermind for women leaders. If you are building out that business for the first time, you've had a fantastic career, but now you're building something new and you got a few clients, but you know that you need to build a personal brand in order to make that sustainable. That's going to be the layer that's going to nest on top of this thing that you're going to market with. I can help you. We are going to be together for 12 months next year, and I would love for you to be a part. I'm enrolling now, but first take a listen to Debbie Millman, who is the famous podcaster behind the podcast Design Matters. And she talks about why and how the cadence of thought leadership helps to build that personal brand and how exactly you're supposed to do it.
Embark upon a self-generated project. It could be a magazine, it could be a daily musing, it could be a newsletter of sorts, it could be a podcast, anything that is directed by you, that's fully your voice, that isn't in any way corrupted by a decision maker other than yourself, and put it out there and do it on a regular basis. Do it weekly or monthly, or determine what that schedule is and then adhere to it. And that will, over time, provide or create a groundswell where if the content that you're making is reaching people, emotionally, then they'll keep wanting more. So that's really what I would recommend. The hard thing about doing this is that it's hard.
So we're going to be talking about all facets of what Debbie just referenced in that soundbite. I'm enrolling for my mastermind for 2023. If you would like to be a part of it, public speaking is going to be a piece of it, personal branding is going to be a piece of it, and I would love for you to be a part of it.